In 1944, the United States found itself embroiled in the Second World War, a global conflict that demanded immense resources, unwavering resolve, and strong leadership. The stakes were high, and the outcome of the war was far from certain. Every decision made by leadership had profound implications, not just for the United States, but for the entire world. The nation looked to its leader, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, for guidance and strength. Roosevelt had already proven himself to be a formidable leader, steering the country through the Great Depression and now through the trials of war. His calm demeanor and reassuring presence were a source of comfort for many Americans during these turbulent times. Roosevelt, having already served 3 terms, made the momentous decision to run for an unprecedented 4th term. This decision was not made lightly. It was driven by a sense of duty and a belief that his leadership was essential for the nation's success in the war. His campaign was marked by a sense of urgency and a call to unity, rallying the American people to support his continued leadership. But his re-election bid was fraught with controversy, raising questions about his health, political maneuvering within his own party, and the ethical implications of leveraging wartime conditions for political gain. Critics argued that no one man should hold so much power for so long, and concerns about Roosevelt's declining health added fuel to the fire. Political cartoons and newspaper headlines of the time reflected a nation grappling with these complex issues. Never before had a president sought, let alone won, a 4th term in office. This unprecedented move shattered long-held traditions and set a new precedent for presidential tenure. It also sparked a national conversation about the limits of executive power and the importance of democratic principles in times of crisis. The discussions in Congress and the public protests highlighted the deep divisions within the country. Some saw Roosevelt's 4th term as a necessary step to ensure stability, while others viewed it as a dangerous concentration of power. Behind the scenes, the weight of the war, the uncertain future of the world, and the immense responsibility thrust upon his shoulders took a toll on Roosevelt. The images of war-torn cities and the constant pressure of making critical decisions weighed heavily on him. His health was deteriorating, a fact carefully concealed from the public. His inner circle worked tirelessly to maintain the image of a strong and capable leader, even as his condition worsened. The media's role in either perpetuating or challenging this secrecy became a topic of intense debate as well, as journalists and citizens alike grappled with the implications of Roosevelt's hidden health issues. Roosevelt's decision to run for a 4th term, while understandable given the circumstances, set in motion a chain of events that would have far-reaching consequences for the nation and the world. His leadership during the war was crucial. The alliances he forged with world leaders and the strategies he implemented on the battlefield were pivotal in shaping the post-war world. The debates that ensued following his re-election were not just about one man's tenure, but about the very fabric of American democracy. These discussions continue to influence political thought and policy to this day, reminding us of the delicate balance between leadership and liberty. Roosevelt's health had been a subject of speculation for years. Despite his charismatic public persona and the image of robust health he projected, whispers about his true physical condition persisted. The public saw a leader who seemed indefatigable, but behind the scenes the reality was far more complex. Struck by polio in his prime, he had battled tirelessly against physical limitations. The disease left him paralyzed from the waist down, but through sheer determination and the use of leg braces, he managed to stand and even walk short distances. His struggle with polio was a testament to his resilience and unyielding spirit. However, by 1944, his health had significantly deteriorated. The stress of leading a nation through the Great Depression and World War II had taken a severe toll on his body. His once boundless energy was waning, and he found it increasingly difficult to keep up with the demands of the presidency. He suffered from severe hypertension and heart disease, conditions kept hidden from the public eye. These ailments were serious and life-threatening, yet they were meticulously concealed. His doctors were sworn to secrecy, and only a select few within his administration were aware of the gravity of his condition. This group of trusted advisors and confidants worked tirelessly to manage the flow of information, ensuring that the public remained unaware of the president's true state. They believed that revealing his frailty would have dire consequences for the nation. His public appearances were carefully orchestrated to project an image of vitality and strength. Every speech, every rally was meticulously planned to show a president in command, a leader who could guide the nation through its darkest hours. The public saw a man who seemed invincible, unaware of the struggles he faced. Behind closed doors, however, the reality was starkly different. Away from the cameras and the public eye, Roosevelt was often exhausted and in pain. His reliance on a wheelchair was a stark contrast to the image of strength he projected. The decision to conceal the true extent of Roosevelt's health from the public was a calculated one. His advisors believed that the nation needed a strong and decisive leader, especially during a time of war. They feared that revealing his frailty would undermine public confidence in his leadership. They argued that any sign of weakness could be exploited by America's enemies. The stakes were too high to risk the truth. While understandable from a political standpoint, the decision to conceal Roosevelt's health raises serious ethical questions. The American people were entitled to know the true condition of their leader, especially when making decisions as critical as electing a president. This lack of transparency undermined the principles of informed consent and democratic accountability. Voters were making decisions based on incomplete and misleading information. In a democracy, the trust between the electorate and their leaders is paramount. By concealing the truth, Roosevelt's administration compromised that trust, raising questions that resonate to this day about the balance between national security and the public's right to know. The selection of a vice presidential candidate is always a significant event in any presidential election. In 1944, with Roosevelt's health a concern, the choice of a running mate took on even greater importance. The Democratic Party was acutely aware that the vice president could very well become president. The incumbent vice president, Henry Wallace, was a controversial figure within the Democratic Party. While popular among the party's more liberal wing, he was viewed with suspicion by some conservative Democrats and party leaders. They saw him as too radical and feared his potential influence on Roosevelt's policies. A behind-the-scenes power struggle ensued within the Democratic Party. Party leaders, concerned about Wallace's electability and his perceived left-leaning views, orchestrated a campaign to replace him on the ticket. They pressured Roosevelt to drop Wallace and select a more moderate running mate. Roosevelt, facing pressure from all sides, ultimately acquiesced to the party's demands. He replaced Wallace with Harry S. Truman, a relatively unknown senator from Missouri. Truman, though lacking Wallace's charisma and policy experience, was seen as a safe and electable choice. The decision to replace Wallace with Truman would have profound consequences, as Truman would become president upon Roosevelt's death just months into his fourth term. By the way, if you like this video, then please like, comment, share, and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. It helps the YouTube algorithm know we're creating quality content, and it just helps the channel in the long run. Thanks so much. The Second World War had an overwhelming impact on American society, transforming the nation's economy, its role in global affairs, and the balance of power within its own government. The war effort required unprecedented levels of coordination and mobilization, leading to significant changes in the daily lives of Americans. Factories that once produced consumer goods were repurposed to manufacture war materials, and millions of men and women joined the workforce to support the war effort. As president, Roosevelt was granted sweeping executive powers to effectively prosecute the war. These powers allowed him to make rapid decisions and implement policies that would have been unthinkable in peacetime. His leadership was characterized by his ability to rally the nation and maintain a sense of unity and purpose, even in the face of adversity. However, the line between wartime necessity and the erosion of civil liberties became increasingly blurred. The government's actions, while aimed at ensuring national security, often came at the expense of individual freedoms. This tension between security and liberty is a recurring theme in American history, and the wartime period of the 1940s was no exception. The wartime exigencies led to the implementation of controversial policies, such as the internment of German, Italian, and Japanese Americans, with the Japanese ultimately facing much harsher conditions. The justification at the time was that it was a necessary measure to prevent espionage and sabotage. Today we recognize the grave injustice. Under the Alien Enemy Control Program, approximately 1,200 German immigrants were arrested at the start of the war. while 11,000 Americans with German heritage were apprehended and detained during the war. Somewhere around 1,600 Italian Americans were arrested, 250 of which were held in military camps. And then Executive Order 9066, signed by Roosevelt, authorized the forced relocation and incarceration of over 120,000 people of Japanese descent, most of whom were American citizens. The legacy of this policy continues to be felt today, as the descendants of those who were interned seek recognition and redress for the wrongs that were committed. The Roosevelt administration also engaged in censorship and propaganda efforts to control the flow of information and shape public opinion. These efforts were aimed at maintaining morale and ensuring public support for the war effort, but they also raised concerns about the suppression of dissent and the manipulation of public opinion. The use of propaganda was widespread, with posters, films, and other media being used to convey messages that supported the war effort. The balance between maintaining national security and protecting individual freedoms is a delicate one, and the actions taken during the war continue to be a subject of debate among historians and scholars. The expansion of executive power during wartime is a recurring theme in American history. Each conflict has brought with it a new set of challenges and a corresponding increase in the powers of the executive branch. This expansion of power is often justified by the need to respond quickly and effectively to threats, but it also raises important questions about the limits of executive authority and the potential for abuse. While some argue that such measures are necessary to effectively address extraordinary threats, others warn of the dangers of unchecked power and the erosion of civil liberties. The debate over the balance between security and freedom is ongoing, and it is a central theme in the study of American history. The actions taken during the Second World War continue to be examined and debated, as scholars seek to understand the complex interplay between security and liberty. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.